Hello guys, to another tutorial in which you will learn to upload files using Node.js and React. Now, uploading files is something very confusing that I've been struggling for a while, and it's a bit of a difficult process because you have to set up many different things and understand how it works. So that's why I'll explain all the steps that you need to take in order to make this successful, because it's very easy to make mistakes and to not get this working properly. So here's the application. We simply have a text and a file upload input. So if I click on it and I select a few files, they get, in theory, they should be uploaded. Let me reload the page. If I click and I select a few files, there we receive a message that says files uploaded successfully, and we have an array with the file names which we can access in our server. And in our dist folder, the uploads are all there, you see. Now let me show you the process step by step so that you can also implement this and get it working yourself. This is the upload file that I will leave in the description so that you can take a look at all the different sections and implement it yourself way easier. But before that, make sure to check my web development course, where you will learn about full stack web development in 2 weeks to become a pro web developer. It contains 8 modules, 7 projects, 40 videos. It contains many tutorials. It's everything made by myself from 5 years of experience, and you will learn everything you need to know to start working immediately. You will build your portfolio and so on. It's pretty amazing. You have many different benefits that I recommend you to check out. Alright, so let's start this project. Go ahead and create a new project. I already have one set up here, which is simply a webpack with our server and an app.js application with an index here and build files. Those are irrelevant right now. So the first step is to implement our input here. Go ahead and create an input type file. This is important. File. Then we add the multiple tag, the attribute, multiple attribute, in order to upload multiple files. Then we say on change. When this changes, we take the event and we pass it to a function called upload files event. That's it. Let's close this. Now that function, let's define that right on top of this. If you're not familiar with React, this is just a functional component where we are using functions inside functions. So let's create a function called upload files. Take the event there and select it. Now our file will be more like our files, because we have multiple, will be e.target.files. These are all of our files. Next, we need to create a form with something called new form data. That's something that it's available to all the browsers, and it's like creating a form from scratch, like a form like this, but programmatically. You can change it and create things with it. Now let's loop it to add all the files into our form. Files.length and i++. This is a for loop. So let's do form append. This is something you have to create just like with the same structure. Now you can add whatever name you want to each file. I will use files because I like that. You can use whatever name here, but be sure to remember it because later you will need it. Then files I and files I dot name. That's it. We just created the form with our files inside it. Now what we need to do is push that to our server. Let's do a fetch request. So we add the try catch block. If it fails, we alert the user. We say upload failed, and we console log the error just in case you want to see it. Console log error upload failed. We pass the error. Now let's do a fetch like this. Let request equals await. We need to make this async. Await fetch, and we'll use an endpoint called upload. Then we pass the options and we say method post. This needs to be a post. And the body. We don't add headers. The body is our form, just like that. We don't add headers because when you upload files, they set up their own headers specifically so that the server understands what's going on. If you add headers yourself, you may run into trouble. So make sure not to add that. Now, response, await request, request.json. And we simply log console log our response just to see it. You can do whatever you want with the response and so on. That's all when it comes to frontend. Now let's go to our server and add the endpoint that we just created. App.post upload. This will be an async request response. Before that, we need a few things. We need Formidable, Bluebird, and FS. Let me remove it so that you can see the process. We do a const Formidable equals require Formidable. Now I've tried multiple of these file upload libraries, and this is the one that worked the best for me, so I recommend you to use Formidable. There's also Multer and others, but I really like this one, and I think it's the best one. Bluebird, we need Bluebird to make promissified file system functions, basically. This is optional, but I recommend it because it simplifies everything when it comes to file systems. So we are requiring the file system, and before that we add the promissify all. Then we require FS. Basically, we are promissifying the entire file system object so that we can use async functions on it. Alright, the post, we have the upload. Now we need to create something called a form, just like we did previously, but with a different syntax. We say formidable.incoming form. That's the incoming form. Now we need to set up a few configurations. Well, before that, let's add a upload folder. This is where our files will be uploaded. I'm using join, which is essentially join from path. You see, path.join. I'm just requesting the entire thing there. And I simply say this name, their name. I want my files to be uploaded to dist and a new folder called uploads here, because this is my distribution folder, I mean. Then I say dist and uploads. Now that folder doesn't exist yet, that's why we'll make sure this exists and so on. But for now, let's add the configuration parameters of our form. We need to say form multiples equals true. That's to allow multiple files in order to be uploaded. Otherwise, you will only receive one. You need to apply this if you want multiple files, of course. Form dot max file size. We need to set up a maximum because we don't want people to upload unlimited sizes. No, I mean, you may receive files that are gigabytes in size, so you don't want to store those massive files in your server. So we say 50, 124, 124. Now that's the size in bytes, and basically these are bytes conversions, and this is where we set up our megabytes. So this is in actually 50 megabytes. If you want to add 100 maximum, or like this, you add 100. If you want 1 gigabyte, you add 124, I believe. I'm not too sure about that. In this case, I just like to limit it to 50 megabytes because it's something reasonable and it won't clutter your server with unlimited files. Next, we need, I think, let me check my notes. We need the upload directory. Now this is interesting because this is where our temporary files will be uploaded. When you send a file to uploads, Formidable creates a form and copies a temporary file with a different name in this location, in our uploads basically. And that file doesn't, it's like this is a clutter name, it doesn't make sense. And the idea is that you use something called fs.rename to move that temporary file into your final destination with the right name after you make the checks and you make sure that it's a valid file when it comes to size, types, and so on. I recommend you to take a look at the documentation in npm. By the way, my course is Hiaton. Just make sure to take a look at that, hiaton.com. Alright, Formidable is here and it tells you everything. I recommend you to read the entire thing. It's not too long and it will really clarify things for you. Now it says here, sets the directory for placing the uploads in. You can move them later using fs_rename. These are the temporary uploads, the uploads that first come to you, and then after you make all the checks, you upload the final file there. You have to use fs_rename. It's just like using the mv command to move files from one place to another. That's it, the way it works. You simply first receive a temporary file and then you move it to the final destination. Next, okay, now we need to make sure our uploads folder exists. So let's create a function for that called function, async function, check create uploads folder. I have the name here. It essentially, it checks if this folder exists, which is this uploads, and if it doesn't, it creates a new one just so we can upload files, because sometimes you may delete it, you may reset everything, and you may not have that folder. So let's do a try. Await will use a function called fs_stat_async. Now if you are not using Bluebird, you will only use stat with callbacks instead of promises. I'm using promises because this function has been created by Bluebird and I'm able to await for them. It's very useful because you don't have to wait for callbacks and then you don't get into this callback hell that we call it. So stat_async is simply, you need to pass the uploads folder so that it knows where is the location, what location is what we're looking for. If this fails, it means the file that we are requesting, that we are checking, this is to check data about a specific folder or file. If this fails, it means that the folder doesn't exist or any other error happened. So if the error is equal, if there's an error and error.code equals end, that means if the folder doesn't exist, that's exactly the error we want. We simply say create the folder with await fs.makedir async, and we say uploads folder. We create it. Now this could also fail because sometimes shit happens and it doesn't work. So we can simply say try another try and catch it again. If this fails, well, this function returns true or false if it was successful or not in creating the folder or in checking the folder. So this will return true if everything went correctly, which means the folder exists, all the folder has been created properly. If it fails, we'll simply return false, and we write a console log just to make sure we know what happened, or an error creating the uploads folder. Else, this means if the error we're getting after using the stat_async function is not at end, which means end means file doesn't exist, it's a name for a shortcut for that. If we have another kind of error, which means something wrong happened when reading it, not related to the if it's existing or not, then we simply return false, and we say console error reading the uploads folder, and in this case we'll return false, which means we failed in creating the folder. Now this is important because many times you will delete the folder, like I did in the previous projects, and you want to make sure it's always there. So now we create an if, and we say if we need to await, well, let me say const folder exist, folder exists, let's use exist simply, and we await for this, and we pass the uploads folder. Now this simply is a name. If folder doesn't exist, it means if there was an error creating the folder, we return res.json, and we say, I mean, the proper way of handling this is to say okay false and a message. That's something I like to send users, because when you have a JSON you can pass multiple configuration, and with this okay parameter you can quickly verify that that there was an error with the request. And we say there was an error creating the uploads folder. If not, we continue. Okay, now that the folder is created, we need to well, to read the files. That's why we'll use a function called form.parse request. You pass the request there, and then you have a few callback variables. We have error, we have fields, and you have files. Now we are interested in files. Fields is, in theory, it's something that contains all the metadata or something about. I'm not too sure about what that contains, because I've tried to read it and it's always empty. So forget about it. It doesn't make sense. Always use the files variable that comes from the callback by using form parse. This is where our files will be read and we'll be able to manage them. So yeah, the first thing is, if there's an error, we return the console log, the error. Do we console log or console error? Console log. Error parsing the files, and we return a res.json. I mean, you can do this in way less lines, but this is the proper way in case you want to do it right and you wouldn't want many mistakes, because if you don't do it, if you don't check for all these errors, you may run into problems later on, and I'm sure that will happen. And if it's error parsing the files, let's say simply error parsing the files. Alright, now how do we check if there is one file or multiple files? Well, we do if not files.files.length. Now this is a bit confusing, but what it's saying is basically that the files object, it doesn't have a length attribute, which means it's not an array, which means it's an object, one single object. Now why is this called files.files? Well, the files variables comes from this one, and the other files, this one, comes from our application where we set the append here and we set files. You can use whatever name you want, but make sure this name is right here. So if you say ABC, make sure this ABC. In fact, let's try that and see how it works. File.abc. Now this means we are only one file. There's only one file. Else, and there are multiple files. And we take our file like this, const file equals files.abc. That's our file. Now what we do with that is simply we need to pass a few things. We need to check the file extension is something that we accept in our server, and then we upload the file extension, because if you don't check if you don't limit the types of files you upload to your server, you may run into viruses. People will upload whatever they want and they will get those viruses inside your server. You don't want that. So let's create a function called check file type, and it will receive the file. Wait, hold up. Await, and that will return, will say it's valid or not. That's an async function. Well, no, that's in fact not. It's not an async function. Let's remove this await. We create a function called I know it's annoying because you have to make sure everything is proper before actually uploading the file, but that's the way it is. You have to make sure all the steps are in place before you actually upload the file, because uploading files is a very sensitive process and you may run into problems if you don't do it right. Viruses are not uncommon. Returns true or false in case it was successful. Alright, check file type. This function checks the file type and returns true or false if it's valid or not. So our type will be file.type.split dash, because files are like this, and pop. You know, the file has a property called type, which is our file name, like image.png, and we are simply splitting this / and we are taking this part only. We're popping this one. Pop means destroy the first element, and we're taking this part. That's what we are interested in. Now let's say const valid types. This depends on your configuration. If you're uploading files, if you want to upload images, that depends on what you want to accept in your server. In my case, I only want pictures, PNG, JPEG, JPG, GIFs, and PNGs. I mean PDFs. I don't want any type of movie type of files. I don't want video. I just want pictures or PDF. It depends on you what you want to accept. So if valid types dot index of type is equal to -1, which means the file we uploaded is not one of the valid types, this function basically says if in the check that this variable exists in this array. In this case, if it returns -1, it means it doesn't exist, which means we are not uploading any of these ones, which means we need to return an error. Return false, console log, the file type is invalid, and then we return true in case it's accepted. So yeah, check file type. You can do this in the same line, but because we're using this function in this other block, I'm creating functions for that. Check file type. Alright, if it's not valid, we return an error. Return res.json, and we say okay, false, and the message, the file uploaded, file received is an invalid type. Okay, and now the final part, which is uploading the file. We create a function. We don't need the function in this case. Use a try catch, and we say await fs.rename async. If you remember, rename is the function we use to move the file, and we pass the file path. File path contains the entire file, just like this, that contains c.user, whatever, and the file name, the temporary file name. That's what we are interested in. So we're taking that file and we're moving it to our uploads. Uploads folder, and we are passing the file name. Now the file name, before that I want to make sure it's also a valid name. So I created a function, a simple function, that there's a function called encode URI component that takes the file name. First I replace empty spaces with dashes. This is the function to replace empty spaces and other characters with dashes, because sometimes you upload files which have spaces and you don't want to deal with that. It's a bit of a trouble and the server won't be able to manage those easily. So I replace those empty spaces with dashes so that they are all connected, all the words, and then I use encode URI component so that it's actually something that is understandable and it's can be used in our URLs. Okay, so file name, and yeah, I rename the file from the temporary location to the final location with the uploads folder and the file name. And if it fails, I simply say console log the file upload failed, trying to remove the temp file. Now if it fails, we'll try to remove the temporary file with a function called unlink async. This is basically remove the file, and we're passing the file.path. If this fails, we don't do anything because we don't care. There's nothing much we can do. So that's why I'm running everything in one line, because it's simpler and it's straightforward. Now in any case, we'll return a res.json that says okay, false, the file couldn't be uploaded. Alright, that's it, the file, it's been uploaded. Let's make sure that works by going to our project and executing that. So I will go to my desktop, cd file uploads, that's my folder, and I run yarn run watch prod. Now I have a script that is in my package JSON that says watch production, which is basically webpack dash watch dash production. That's just to compile our app.js file. Then let me run the server, file uploads, and run yarn start. Well, hold up. Before that, we need to install our dependencies. We didn't install. You can use npm. Let me clear this. We didn't install Bluebird and Formidable. So if you're using npm, do Bluebird and Formidable. Now I'm using yarn, which is an alternative to npm. So I simply do yarn add, but it's the same thing. Yarn add and npm install is the same thing. You install those in your project. Make sure they're installed before running the server. Don't worry about the errors here. It's successful anyway. It works anyway. So then run yarn run and nodemon. That's a script that runs nodemon server. Now there's an error somewhere, line 92, and yeah, wait to pass the message. Try this again. Now the server is watching and this is compiling. So if I reload this, you see the same thing that we saw previously. And if I upload one file, that's the file, but we don't get anything. That's interesting. Where's the because we didn't send a response if it was successful. So we need to send a return a final response, a successful response in case it was successful. And we say okay, true, and the message: the files have been uploaded successfully. Now you can see it worked. Even though we didn't receive the message, it worked because we created a folder with the file. Now let me remove that so you can see there's no uploads folder right now. Now if I go, this is reloaded. If I go to my page and I choose the files, for instance this one, the files have been uploaded successfully, and I received uploads and the uploaded file, which is this one. You can access that from your server if you configure all up to receive the files and so on. But the file is there and it works. Now I want to include something which is a variable that says my uploaded files, and it's an array. This will contain all the files that we uploaded, and we'll pass those like this. Files, my uploaded files, just so that you can see the files that have been uploaded and the names in your response. So when the file has been uploaded here, we push the file name. Now when it comes to multiple files, now that one singular file is working, let's add the multiple files. We can simply copy all this entire block. You can create a separate function, but for simplicity I'm just running another copy here. So when it comes to multiple files, we need to use a for loop because we have multiple. So let's say at I equals 0, I less than files.abc.length, I plus plus. Remember, abc is coming from here, from the append. And then let's put everything inside except the success message, which is everything here. And yeah, my upload files. Okay, file equals files abc, and that will be 0. I mean I. Those are, each file independently is that one. Now we check the file is valid, we create the file name. If not, we return. We try to rename it, which means moving it to the final location. Everything is the same. And when this finishes, we return the same error, the same success message, I mean. So that's it. Our form uploading has been done completely. Let's check that with multiple files. Let's in fact remove the uploads folder so that you can see the entire process. Alright, that's refreshed. And let's upload multiple files. I have these 3 pictures open. The files have been uploaded successfully, and we have an array with the file names that you can access on your browser if you have that enabled, which means sending the right file. And yeah, that's it. Essentially, you see the uploads and you have all the files uploaded there. By the way, these are some cool pictures. And that's it about when it comes to uploading files. Now, as a final note, I want you to check my web development course by going to heaton.com. That is Heaton with 2 O's. And if you want to learn more and to actually become a full stack web developer and land a dream job, basically work for a startup and earn a nice salary, you simply go here and enroll by clicking on pricing. There's a discount right now, and you simply buy it, and you will have access to the contents by clicking on here. These are all videos. Everything is, I mean, there's a ton of content, everything you need to know from getting jobs, which this is something very interesting because you will see my steps to get jobs when it comes to programming. Now that's something very difficult if you're new, but I make sure you understand the tricks to get it done faster. And yeah, we'll build multiple projects like full stack application step by step, testing, a Node.js backend. We'll create an e-commerce application. There's many things that we'll do. So be sure to check it out and to purchase it if you like it. Also, go to my website Merunas.io, where you will be able to buy my blockchain book, my Ethereum development book. It's for $50 because it's one of the few books available. It's written by me. And join my email list to receive content straight to your email before anyone else. So that's it. Thank you for watching. Have an amazing day.